year was 1415. England and France were locked in a long struggle for dominion over French lands, a protracted conflict later known as the 100 Years' War. King Henry V of England, driven by his claim to the French throne, landed with an army in northern France. After capturing the port of Harfleur earlier that autumn, his forces were depleted by disease and combat. Determined to reach the English-held stronghold of Calais, Henry led his tired, reduced army northward, hoping to avoid a decisive battle. Yet French forces blocked his route near the small village of Agincourt, assembling an imposing army of knights, men-at-arms, and cavalry. The October rains had turned the farmland into a narrow quagmire, thick with mud and puddles. Under gray skies, with a persistent chill in the air, both sides prepared for a confrontation that neither had initially planned for, but could not now escape. Despite being heavily outnumbered, King Henry arranged his men in a disciplined formation. He placed the longbowmen on the flanks behind wooden stakes hammered into the wet ground, barriers designed to maim charging horses. In the center, the English men-at-arms and knights in partial plate and chainmail stood resolute, displaying the lion emblems of England and flying banners adorned with St. George's Cross. As the drizzle continued, the ground underfoot worsened. Many archers, no strangers to harsh conditions, removed their shoes entirely, trusting bare feet more than slippery soles in the morass. Despite a narrow battlefield that could favor a defensive stance, Henry remained vigilant. He addressed his men, invoking both their sense of loyalty and the favor of God. They knew their best hope lay in standing firm behind their sharpened stakes and unleashing the deadly might of the English longbow. On the far side, the French nobility had assembled in force, boasting large numbers of heavily armored knights and men-at-arms. Their plate armor, engraved and adorned with the fleur-de-lis, gleamed even in the muted light. War horses, similarly bedecked in heraldic caparisons, pawed nervously at the mud-soaked ground. The French commanders realized the field was both narrow and drenched, yet some knights insisted upon a swift cavalry charge to claim a glorious victory. This hastiness would soon be tested by the reality of the sodden earth. The heavier French armor, combined with the confined space and lingering rain, would sap both energy and morale. Undeterred, the French believed their superior numbers could crush the English, muddy field or not. As they inched forward, the tension thickened. Arrows knocked on the English side, swords and lances raised on the French side. Without a clear, unified signal, sections of the French vanguard pushed forward. Immediately, the English archers loosed volleys of bodkin-tipped arrows into the advancing mass. A deadly hail rained down from above, skewering knights, horses, and men-at-arms alike. Despite the French commitment, their cavalry thrust became confused as horses slipped in the mud and riders encumbered by heavy armor struggled to maintain formation in the narrow approach. The wooden stakes that the English had driven into the ground disrupted horse and rider, funneling the French into an even tighter corridor. Knights who managed to pass the stakes found themselves mired in deep, sticky sludge, still under constant arrow fire. The English, for their part, remained relatively sheltered behind their own lines and braced for an inevitable close-quarters battle with any French who broke through the curtain of arrows. As wave after wave of French knights fell or were injured, the ranks behind them pressed forward, determined to make use of their overwhelming numbers. Many knights dismounted, hoping to advance more reliably on foot. But the mud and narrow confines made every yard a punishing ordeal. Fighting became a series of desperate, chaotic encounters where men slipped, sank, and wrestled to keep their footing. The English, though fewer in number, seized every advantage. Men-at-arms with swords and poleaxes cut down knights trapped in the mire, while archers, having spent most of their arrows, wielded mallets, daggers, and axes. Time and again, the French impetus faltered. The 2nd and 3rd French divisions hesitated, struggling to coordinate their attacks across the constricted, muddy plain. Meanwhile, King Henry V fought beside his troops, rallying them and refusing to withdraw in the face of the French onslaught. By late afternoon, the French effort collapsed. Their pride and numbers had been undone by the quagmire, the narrow battlefield, and the unrelenting English arrows. High-born knights and nobles littered the field among shattered lances and torn standards. Although the English sustained casualties, their disciplined stand carried the day. King Henry's unexpected triumph at Agincourt solidified his reputation throughout Christendom, becoming a testament to the power of tactical innovation, fortified positions, and strong leadership. Though the 100 Years' War would continue, the Battle of Agincourt gained a near-mythic status. Ever since, historians have revisited its muddy fields and fierce exchanges as a prime example of how determined troops, a constricted terrain, and lethal longbows could overcome even the loftiest knights of France. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more epic historic battles brought to you by Historic Warfare.